Hello, it's Mr. Shield again. We're going to talk about soil today. All right, soil. It's not just dirt. It is a mixture of organic and inorganic materials. What does that mean is you basically have chunks of rock that have been broken down, and that makes the basis of it, if you want to think about it. You can have sand, you can have clay, which is really small, you can even have bigger particles. That affects how the water moves through it. And then you have the organic matter in it. You have the dead and decaying parts of plants that make soil. So I grew up in Virginia Beach, and I grew up 200 yards from a nice big beach. Beach is full of sand, just nice white sand. My parents' house was in an area that had very sandy soil, but it was soil because it was a maritime forest, and all the leaves had fallen, and they had built up the organic matter in the soil. So you had this very sandy soil that was made of that same sand that's on the beach, but it had the organic matter that made so things could grow in it. So you have different types of soil. You have sandy, you have clay, you have different types. So all these, all the soil is, it's little chunks of rock. That is the non-organic part of it. So they can break down in different ways. The water has a lot to do with it. They wash downstream. You can have things that maybe different pHs, different types of chemical reactions. But soil is formed over a long period of time, and it takes a long time to really build it up. In that Black Blizzard, I believe it was thousands of years because it was so much of a grassland. It built up for so long. But it just wasn't, once you put a plow in it, we had issues. Um, Function of soil, it's a medium. What that means is for plant growth, is it just a place you put plants. So you have soil for timber. If you go into trees, so they cut down for paper or to make the wood for your houses, that's all grown in the soil. Or stuff that grows cotton, or the stuff that grows your food. It holds a lot of water because the plants have to be able to get the water, and that has to do with how big the spaces are and how much organic matter there is. And it also filters out the water that goes through the ground. So a plow, what can happen is a plow cuts through the soil and it turns it up. If it's very dry, like the Black Blizzard, that can just blow away. So that soil that had been there on the plains in the documented Black Blizzard, as I was saying, it had been there for a long time, but it was packed down. When you brought a plow through it and it got dry, it just blew right away because you need that plow to get in there and plant your stuff, but you have to be careful with it. And so there's a lot of methods people have worked on to make that a lot safer for the soil. Quick soil profile. I actually took a class on soils in college. It's incredibly important knowing these things. We're not going to go into all the different levels of it, but if you live in a if you live in a country that has poor soil, people go hungry. That's just historically that's what's happened. So agriculture is incredibly important to the world. So what we're worried about is this top layer here, the top soil. So all that, because that's where all the plants grow, and that's how they build up the organic matter. That's where you get your topsoil. Fertility is just how much stuff can basically live in it. That how well it grows stuff. Fertile soil grows a lot more plants. All right, porosity versus permeability. Porosity is how many little spaces there is. Then they can be open spaces if it's dry, but then those spaces get filled with water. Permeability means how fast the water moves through it. So if you make spaghetti and you pull it into a colander and the water goes right through it, that means it's pretty permeable. It means that the water is going to flow right through it. And this has to do with how big how the grains are in the actual soil. I'm not going to get into that. So clay is very small and tight, whereas gravel and sand is bigger areas, and so water moves through it better. Clay usually it doesn't move through as well. Uh, permeability, that's how it moves through. Just like in fine sands and gravel, they move quickly through, but a clay, a lot of times the bottom of a pond or a wetland is clay because it holds water. pH affects soils. We've talked about this, how pH is just how acidic or how basic something is. Some plants really like, or they need it to be more acidic so that they can get, it makes certain elements more available to them, like iron, grass, and roses like it acidic. Okay, texture just has to do with the size of the grains and how much stuff's mixed up into it. All right, the soil texture triangle. What this is telling you is they have different names for like how much silt, which is one size, and then a clay is another size particle, and then sand is another size. How much, like how many percentages? If you bring the lines together from all three, that'll tell you what the name of it is, and then the name of that you can go back and see how much of each type of particle. We're not really going into that right now. Okay, I'm not going to go into it more. Nutrients. Everybody's heard of fertilizer. If you go and you buy something like 10, 10, 10, the first 10 is how much nitrogen is, 10% nitrogen. The second 10 is potassium, and the second one is phosphorus. There's other things in there, but these are the big things they need. And nitrogen helps things grow really well. That's what they really need. If you go back to your, sorry guys, organic chemistry from biology, nitrogen is in proteins, and you need to build proteins. So 10, 10, 10, or this is 26, 211, so 26% nitrogen, 2% phosphorus, and the K is potassium. You'll see it on, you'll see that, just remember the K is potassium. That's another one, just showing how it works. Okay, soil conservation. You don't want your soil to wash away or to be blown away. You saw the video. So there's different ways they can do it. They add things to the soil to make it so it doesn't move as much, like manure, and then as a fertilizer also. You put other fertilizers, have a lot of nitrogen. What they do also is, it's called cover crops. So when you're not growing the stuff that you're making your money on, they'll put like a grass or something in there. So it holds it all together. So when over the winter, instead of the things blowing away, the grass grows and holds it there. Rotation, they won't put the same thing in over and over. Down in a lot of south where there's more agriculture, it's a corn, soybean, wheat rotation a lot of times. Those are big products. Everybody needs all three of those. So they kind of rotate them all so that no one is grown all the time, so it doesn't deplete the soil for certain things. And then they put hedgerows, ways to keep it from the wind from whipping long ways. It makes it so that the soil doesn't get pushed away. So these are conservation practices. I would say hedgerows, where you can do terracing, which is you make sure it's not running downhill. You can add manure to it, or other improvements, just different types of organic matter, or cover crops. You grow stuff in there. And you can also they kill the cover crops and then plant the actual what they're going to grow and sell right through the middle of that. So no-till is another one. That's the cover crop I was talking about. And contouring. So if you contour with the land instead of cutting against it, it keeps the water to run not as fast and kind of doesn't really pull the soil down with it when the water runs. So fallow, this last one here is leave fallow, it means don't use it. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll grow for several years and then they'll just let one a field just grow. Not plant, just go back to, well, they'll put something like a cover crop and they're not going to grow anything to harvest that year. There's actually federal programs that pay people after a certain amount of years to just put a crop in there that will stay and grow, and then the organic matter gets back into the soil, and then they can plant later on. So this is a quick overview of soil. Like I said, soil is so important. Doesn't sound like it, but if you lived in a country that didn't have soil and didn't have water, it would be a totally different game. So hope all is well.